following podcast is going to take place in the main building of UL between Miss Tracey McGirr, who is a student teacher, and myself, Miss Sarah Kelly, who is an experienced teacher of adolescents with autism.
Hi Sarah, thanks a million for agreeing to see me. I'm heading out to teach practice. I just have a few different queries and a few concerns. So what happens if I have a student with autism in my class?
Well, Tracey, you know that autism is a developmental disability and that it significantly affects verbal and non-verbal communication and social interaction. What's important to keep in mind is that autism is based on a spectrum. It ranges from a milder form to a more severe form.
So Sarah, do students with autism all learn differently?
Have you ever heard of Temple Grandin? She's lived with autism all of her life and she's gone on to become a doctor of animal science. She's written a number of books on autism and she's known for her motivational talks on the subject. Let me show you this TED Talk here because it's going to give you a bit more insight into how your student with autism thinks and learns. Temple says that she herself is a visual thinker. She thinks in pictures. She compares her mind and the way it works to Google Images. Have a listen here and see what she says.
Now the thing is, the visual thinker is just one kind of mind. You see, the autistic mind tends to be a specialist mind. Good at one thing, bad at something else. And where I was bad was algebra. And I was never allowed to take geometry or trig. Gigantic mistake. I'm finding a lot of kids that need to skip algebra, go right to geometry and trig. Now another kind of mind is the pattern thinker. More abstract. These are your engineers, your computer programmers. Now this is pattern thinking. That praying mantis is made from a single sheet of paper. No scotch tape, no cuts, and there in the background is the pattern for folding it. Here are the types of thinking. Photorealistic visual thinkers like me. Pattern thinkers, music and math minds. Some of these oftentimes have problems with reading. You also will see these kind of problems with kids that are dyslexic. You'll see these different kinds of minds. And then there's a verbal mind. They know every fact about everything. Now another thing is the sensory issues. I was really concerned about having to wear this gadget on my face. And I came in half an hour beforehand so I could have it put on and kind of get used to it. And they got it bent so it's not hitting my chin. But sensory is an issue. Some kids are bothered by fluorescent lights. Others have problems with sound sensitivity. It's going to be variable.
So, Tracey, did you find that helpful?
Yeah, it's actually all starting to become a wee bit more clear.
Okay, well, Tracey, if you consider a Mac computer and a Windows PC, they're both wired differently, but although you have different operating systems, they both work effectively. So now think of your student with autism as a Mac computer in a Windows PC dominated environment. He or she is hardwired differently, not incorrectly, just differently.
So just speaking of environment there, do children with autism find the school environment difficult?
Well, a child with autism they're going to find it difficult to communicate with others because they're not really aware of the social skills involved in holding a conversation. They may also find it difficult to hold eye contact with you when they're communicating. They'll find it difficult to know when to respond correctly, and they may talk at others rather than talk with them. Also, students with autism may not be aware that you're talking to them unless it's made clear, so you refer to them by name. They may have difficulty with listening and responding correctly. Children with autism usually prefer to talk about things that they're fond of and that they can relate to, so sometimes they may interrupt your class because they're not aware of the appropriate time to speak out in class. So you can see all these things make it hard for children with autism to make friends at school.
Absolutely. So is there any way I can help them with their ability in communicating?
Well, you could use PECS, which is a Picture Exchange Communication Program. This can help to enhance the students' communication abilities. It can be used to teach students to communicate a need by exchanging an image.
Sarah, but how does autism really affect a student's learning ability?
Well, students with mild autism have limited attention spans and a weak ability to retain information. Typically, students will have delayed conceptual development and slow speech and language development. Students with moderate autism experience impaired development, typically in areas like language, communication, social and personal development. In the case of severe and profound general learning difficulties, pupils may experience severe impairment in the ability to function in respect of self-awareness, awareness of the environment and independence. Others may have difficulties in processing information. These elements are linked to communication difficulties like memory, auditory and language processing.
Does autism usually affect a student's behaviour in class?
Well, traditional discipline is probably not going to work for your child with autism. Children with autism are unable to understand the consequences of their actions, so punishment is likely to make their behaviour worse and may even cause more distress for the child. Children with autism often display obsessive and repetitive characteristics, which can have major implications for their behaviour. And behavioural problems may just be due to difficulties in expressive language. The majority of behavioural problems are simply just due to poor expressive communication skills. So say if you ask your student to do something in class and they don't fully comprehend the task, then this could result in a behavioural issue. And ABA is a good method for one-to-one behaviour management here, so you could use that.
Sarah, do you think I'd be better just to alter my teaching methods in general so I can help my student with autism?
When teaching adolescents with autism, the most important thing to do is to get to know your student. You need to get to know them personally. What are their strengths and weaknesses? What are their goals? Do they have special interests? Each student has an individual educational plan that you could refer to. And you should talk to their parents regularly, see what strategies are working for them at home. You should get in contact with other professionals such as psychologists, special education teachers, because continuously working together is in the student's best interest. You'll get to know your student through observation and assessment, and you'll know how you can provide direct instruction for him or her. And then you can tailor this curriculum to suit the student individually and provide differential assessment. Instructions should be kept simple and brief though. Be careful with your use of language, as often students with autism take things quite literally. So phrases such as break a leg, which mean one thing to us, will mean something completely different to your student with autism. Try not to overload your student with long verbal instructions, but rather break down the tasks and make them much more manageable and less overwhelming.
That's really informative, Sarah. So what about the classroom itself? Will that affect the learning?
Well, you need to consider the setup of your classroom and how it facilitates the student's learning. You need to consider the layout of the room, the positioning of the furniture, where the student's going to sit. Are there any distractions or loud noises that could be agitating for your student? If you prepare a classroom schedule in advance, it's also going to allow you to systematically plan for highly preferred activities immediately following less preferred activities, to increase on-task behaviour for the less preferred activities. So say if you have a student that dislikes algebra equations but they love working on computers, then you might find it helpful to schedule 5 minutes of computer time immediately following their work with algebra. And this is known as the pre-math principle.
So Sarah, would you say planning definitely is the key issue?
Yeah, planning ahead means you can preempt anything that's going to cause problems, and then you can avoid it. So it ensures that your lessons are going to run smoothly and activities are going to be well planned out in advance. The need for routine, structure and predictability is very important for students with autism. Personal daily schedule with words and pictures could be attached to your student's desk or could be displayed somewhere in your classroom. And this is going to ease the transition from one activity to another. Anything outside of their typical schedule can be distressing for the student. If something outside the norm is due to happen on a particular day, something like a fire drill, then you can ease the distress of this by giving your student advance warning of this and talking to them to reassure them.
But will the student's special needs assistant, their SNA, not be able to help you with that, or what is their role?
Well, their role is of great importance, but this role is to assist and care for the student's needs, while the role of teaching the student lies with you as the teacher. But you must consider that not every student with autism has an SNA.
Oh yeah, I heard something recently about that in the budget.
Yeah, there was actually 365 additional special needs assistant jobs announced, which is great news, because special needs education is finally getting more funding.
Sarah, this has been so informative. Thank you so much. But is there any more research you can think of that would be helpful for me to look up?
Yeah, I have a few journals here, some books and some websites, so have a look at these in your own time and then you can get back to me.
Once again, thanks a million. You've really given me so much information to think about. Thank you.